Adam, you had mentioned about like, kind of having a baseline. Like where does that come into play when it comes to like the ups and downs in the business?
I think it's just not straying too far from the middle. Um, just kind of remembering the good moments will pass, but also the bad moments will pass as well. So just staying baseline as much as you can. I also think too, in the beginning, it's like allowing yourself to suck and like kind of just understanding that you're not going to be as good as you think you will be or that you should be right away. And I think just like giving yourself almost that grace of like, I'm not that good at this thing, but it's not always going to be like this, is kind of just, also moving you back to the middle of not, being too high or too low.
Right. It's not always going to be that way. I mean, have you always had that sales mindset?
Definitely not. No. I did cross country. So when I started running, I could only run a 9-minute mile. And then after running and running and running, it got all the way down to like a 5-minute mile. And so just, knowing you're not always going to be running a 9-minute mile was kind of,
Any type of performance that requires development over time can be compared to like developing in sales and especially your mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Big difference though is that usually when you're getting into sports, you're getting into sports with your peers who are typically within a range around where you're at, right? So you're all like the same age. And then as you grow older, right, the difference, the gap between like people that are really good and not that great, it's widened.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when someone's jumping into sales, it's like you're already an adult. And so it's like the first time you're playing a sport, but comparing yourself to someone that's like been doing it for a long time, or comparing yourself, like, right, that gap is massive. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult is because of that comparison or those expectations that you just naturally create that aren't very realistic for your first day or your first week.
So what this calls to mind for me is like building confidence a day at a time, a call at a time. It's interesting how so when we make that comparison, what happens is the deposits that create confidence, they're meaningful. But when we start making comparisons to, where someone else is versus where we're at, we undervalue the individual deposits. So it's like we say, well, I'm not to where they are yet. And so it's just like, what is this, sometimes thinking about it's going over well, what is that old mindset? Well, some people will think, well, what is it worth? It's nothing. And some is it's worth something, the individual actions, the individual deposits, and that it's actually incrementally getting you somewhere.
Yeah.
But just not shrinking the value of it based off of the growth of where someone else is.
Right. And it's tough because it's like at those individual deposits, it's like something that does build confidence is when you get a yes, right? When you're successful, or maybe you just get further into the conversation than you had previously, depending on what your perspective is, right? Depending on what your mindset is. Because a lot of times you won't think of okay, well, I got to the end of the script and then they hung up on me, as opposed to being like, I actually got to the end of the script this time and I hadn't before. But it's difficult because a lot of the day-to-day stuff is you're getting 100 no's and 1 yes at the beginning, right? Until it's until your numbers start to improve and over time it starts to change. And one thing we were talking about was just Adam, you had brought up it makes sense that businesses do quarterly reviews or annually reviews because on the day-to-day basis there isn't enough data to it's just because someone doesn't buy something on that day doesn't mean you should completely pivot, change your business model, sell a different product, right? Because it takes time for things to grow. And so, yeah, counting those wins, those victories, actually paying attention to them whilst remembering that you experience life on a minute-to-minute basis, on a day-to-day basis. And there's ups and there's downs, but having a quote unquote bad day is irrelevant to your month, because you can have 15 bad days and 15 great days. And in sales, that'll still be a really great month. You know what I mean? But you won't get to the point of having those 15 good days if you're so downtrodden by a couple crappy days that you don't have the will to live any longer. You're just like, okay, I'm not going anymore, right? And I think that kind of it. I mean, I'm obviously being dramatic, but like that's when it comes to like a sales mindset. So much of it has to do with like, when you say the middle, you're talking about like just as far as your emotions and your energy goes, not getting too caught up in negative emotions, right?
Right. The losses.
Yeah.
Because, just like wins, you can string wins together. And some people have the baseline of stringing losses together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's kind of like you can choose to focus on what you want, right? Like what you focus on will grow. And so if what we're doing is we're focusing on like increasing the wins and successes the successful dial session, the successful appointment set, the successful, the success of reading a chapter in a book, right? Each of those are ones that we can stack.
It's like also what is a loss, right? Because you're kind of defining what a loss is for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's why it's like mindset. It's something that's like can be very difficult for someone to grab hold of, because it just has to do with like, is this a loss or is this a win? And it completely depends on your perspective, right? Your mindset, and where it's like, have I grown individually from this conversation with this client? Have I learned something? I may have not known the answer in that conversation, but because of that conversation, now I do know the answer, right? Then is that a loss or is that a win? And so many people will just be so focused on them not having the answer in that one conversation that they just count it as a loss. So it stops them from having more conversations, because then they want to have all of the answers, but you can't really have all of the answers until you have experience. And yeah, like you're saying, it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy, or like it becomes like a feedback loop in a negative direction.
Yeah. Because, and here's what's interesting is, there's a lot of individuals that will say like, all right, so I set 10 points this week. I was such a failure because my goal was 15 or 20. Such a failure. And it's true. It's just to say, it's like, you know what? I did 10. That's great. But how can I end up getting to 15? What's preventing me from getting to 15 or 20? And just dissecting that way, because I feel like what we do is we end up processing wins in a way that actually undermines like the lessons in it. Like it's a failure. Failure ends up, I feel like it ends up being a blanket label that we don't learn anything from. So it says, I didn't hit my goal. What can I learn from? What was the obstacle or the thing I didn't do? Or, did I have enough resources? Did I have enough skill set? Did I have, enough work that was put into it in order to actually get the end result that I wanted?
So, I mean, what do you feel like that helps you do?
I think it just helps me do the day-to-day mundane things of just the little work, stacking the layers of evidence. Because I feel like oftentimes it's like you want what someone has, but you aren't willing to do the work to get there. And you don't know what they had to do to get there. So you just see the snapshot of their success. But, if you're not willing to do what they had to do to get to that snapshot, then you don't almost deserve it, basically. So I think it just helps me just like chipping away at, building up that evidence.
Let me let them in. Hello. Who's coming in? Let's see here. What up?
What's up, Sean?
Welcome.
Yes. Glad to have you. Yeah.
Well, really, some ladies. So Sway could be perfect human.
All right. Well, Brian, so what we were chatting about prior to your arrival, we were talking about mastery of sales mindset. And I mean, even though kind of like, so I think in the arena of sales, there are the ups and downs. So in general, mindset is what we're talking about, but the sales, why is kind of like a sealed mind important when it comes to the mindset to affect your sales?
Yeah.
So, I try to just kind of dive into that. And, you've been in our industry for how long?
15 years. Yeah.
15 years. So, over 15 years, you've seen your mindset change, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, what they got.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the beginning, what were some of the primary kind of mindset challenges that you feel like were a sticking point for you that was hindering your results?
I'd say a big one for me is I didn't recognize where I was, and I thought it was just a period of time in my life where my self-esteem was so low that I didn't think that I could make the changes that were necessary to get to a next level of success. I felt that I had done my best, and I was starting to get worried that the best I did was the best I was ever going to do. And so it created a real brittleness in my person, or it was a brittleness that I had because I needed so many of the things outside of me that I wasn't in control of to change. Then when they didn't change, I lost more and more hope. I needed the leads to be a little bit better. I needed the people to be in the right place. I needed them to be in the right mindset, ready to buy, but not knowing how to buy. Like having the money to do it, but not ever having put that line item in their budget before. And now they're 65 years old, and we're talking about saving money in a real and valuable way and this might be the first substantive conversation that they've ever had about that. And so what I realized over time was that no matter how low my self-esteem is, no matter how low my mindset is, even if I need the outside world around me to change, it doesn't matter because it's not through my efforts, right? Not through my efforts as an individual. So I had to go from trying to adapt the world to my limited skill set to adapting my skill set, my mindset, my heart set to the world around me in order to change it. And it was amazing how when I started to change like that, all of a sudden all these other people got right. It was like I was blaming them this whole time. If these clients would be ready to buy, I'd be fine. And then I started working on myself, and all of a sudden I had clients who were magically ready to buy. Oh, I must have gotten into a really different stream, but it was in the same place, working with the same types of people who were looking for the same things, who went through the same process. And the variable was me. The variable was my limited mindset, waiting to get lucky enough for circumstances to change enough for this, to bottle lightning in this moment. But if that lightning didn't strike, I wasn't going to be able to win. And two, going to this place where I became the lightning, where it was like, if I'm the lightning, it's my job to strike, right? And if I'm the one who needs to bring my energy, and that's the most valuable thing that I have, then I have to stop giving voice to the weaknesses. I have to stop giving so much vocabulary and language to the victim mindset. And that was a real dramatic shift. And when I was in that position, at least, and I noticed this sometimes with other people, is you get so frustrated and so defeated about other people. Oh, it's so hard to find good people. This business is difficult. All my customers, they're no good. Maybe if I had smarter, wealthier customers, they wouldn't lie to me, right? And it's like, well, maybe if I had put a little bit more high quality practice in, I would realize that it wasn't that I needed, people say buyers are liars, right? And it's like, well, these customers, they don't have enough money, or they're not smart enough, and all that stuff. It's like all of that is ridiculous. You know, and so in order for me to win, this is what I need. I need the perfect leads to call them at the perfect time. And somebody else could call them, that'd be perfect. But you the perfect script, and I need them not only to be exceptionally smart, but not too smart so they overthink everything. And I need them to be rich, but not so rich that they're self-insured. And I need them to be the most honest people in the world, right? Even though every single person I've ever met struggles with being honest with themselves. And I realized if those are all the things I need, I'm going to be Poe for the rest of my life. I'm going to be scratching and clawing at the bottom rather than climbing to the top. Yeah. And so it was getting those mindsets. And in order to have a consistent mindset, I needed to learn how to create a consistent input. And that's where the advice about reading and mentorship that both you and I had, and all of us have had, that's where that came into such play.
The first step to fixing your situation is recognizing that your situation needs to be fixed. Like, so there's a bit of like humility that's involved in that entire process, where it's like acknowledging that, like, hey, I'm not where I want to be. I can't, what the person I am today got me to where I am. I'm never going to be able to get to where I want to go and being the same. So I think if we're to take a lesson away from that, and it's like Kishan, a lesson that you could take away from this is, are you getting the results that you want? Are you willing to change and to get the results, to become the person to get the results you want? So, yeah. And that was something that, you embraced. You said, okay, I'll get it through a book. I'll get it through a mentor. I'll get it through people that are way smarter than me, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's that moment of desperation that happens just before defeat. And I'm so glad that in that moment of desperation, I recognized where I was and that I was on the edge of defeat. And so being in that place, I was like, this is the time. This is how people end up useless for their whole life. Or this is how people end up in a place where they get to change a lot of lives and impact a lot of people. And it's the decision that I'm going to make at this point. But I had to get to a place of where I didn't have very much emotional well-being in order to do that, in order to make that happen. But I couldn't let myself sit there for so long that I didn't believe that hope was a worthy cause, right? It's like you can become hopeless, but there's a point where it's not less hope, it's no hope, right? And that can be a tricky situation. And in the very same ways, it's like the question I know you were confronted with earlier in your business, and the same one that I did. Whose fault is it that you're here? Yeah. Right? Wherever we're in low situations, it's like that's one of the most impactful questions that can get asked, and it's a hard question to hear, but at the same time, it's a really centering question. Whose fault is it that you're here? And when somebody is willing to say, like you've had to say, like I've had to say, like both of you guys have had to say, it's mine. I own the fact that I'm here. The fact that I'm not in the place I want to, not making the money I want to, without the relationships that I really want, without any sort of real clear pathway to the next level of my life. It's me. Because even if we could blame somebody else because so many people have experienced traumas in their life, blaming that person will effectively move us through. And so that acknowledgement of the truth without that needing to be diminished, sweetened, or completely off the table, that's a piece of truth that becomes the bedrock for actual growth, that stable growth that you could build a real life on. Because that's why we're in this business. We're not in this business building a good business so we have a good business, right? We're in this business so we can build a good business that supports a life that we love, the relationships that mean the most, and the opportunities to feel alive, right? That's what everybody wants. Everybody wants to be somebody and to help others. Those are the two most important things across the board. You go around and ask people, what do you want from the end of your life? Well, I want to be somebody, and I want to help somebody, right? I want to have an impact on somebody. Those are the two things that at the core, when somebody hasn't become zero, it hasn't gone to that place of zero hope, but as long as they're hopeless or above, or they have less hope than they did before or above that, they get to go to this place and say, it's me. I'm the reason I'm here. And that's the bad news. And the good news is it's me and I'm the reason I'm here. Right? Because if it's the bad news, it can also be the good news because we're standing at the center of that. And that becomes powerful bedrock to build a stable foundation for the next levels of our business as we grow up.
Yeah. That's so good. Kind of lasting transformation that happens from taking 100% accountability for the results that we achieve.
Yeah. And it's really unpalatable. I mean, all of us know how sour the truth can taste at different moments. Like, all of us have been in that place where it's like, what feels taste out of my mouth, right? But it's not the taste of it that matters. It's the lasting impact of it that matters.
Yeah.
And not all things that are good for you taste sweet. In fact, most of them taste bitter, or they don't have very much of the taste. But there's a ton of nutrition packed in that, and that's what makes us go. And if we always need sweet things, then that's going to be the thing that kills us.
Right.
Just like in our physiology, if we eat sweet things all the time, our body deteriorates. Well, if we only ingest sweet things into our mentality, then we get we got a touch of the sugar in the brain. Right. Our brain gets a little bit too sweet and soft, and we have to really build that just like any other muscle, right? If we don't use that muscle, it just becomes gray matter, it becomes tissue, and that's a natural cause as we grow older. The natural thing is more and more gray matter. And so we have to continue to work to keep those parts of our brain alive. Otherwise, if those parts of our brain shut off, then we don't have access to them anymore. Just like when we shut off places in our heart for bitterness.
Yeah.
And so when we keep the information moving through our brain, when we keep inspiration moving through our heart, those muscles grow, not in the way of an enlarged heart, but in the way of a higher quality heart, a higher quality brain, that where you have more access to what the capacity of it.
Yeah, I think it's really cool the way that, because mindset can sometimes be this really abstract concept where it's like for your physical body, you're always going to be walking by a mirror, sometimes unfortunately, right? Exactly. And you're like, oh, it got that bad. People notice that. Like, oh, I did the gym, right? So there's like these reminders or that we'll consistently have for our physical body, but our mindset, that's the thing that it's like, because it's from moment to moment, every second of every day, we're living inside of it, and it can be very hard to track it or even be aware of where we're at with it. And so it can be easy to allow ourselves to slip in either direction. And there's, you mentioned like that desperate moment, right? And you were able to recognize what was happening like contextually for your story in general, which is huge, but also like recognizing like where your head was at in it. And it's like, it's kind of the idea of it would be so much worse to be like functionally mediocre or like a functional alcoholic is so much worse than someone that allows themselves to like hit rock bottom, right? Because you can just become so accustomed to the day-to-day of whatever it is, whatever squalor that you're living inside of, right? And it's the same with our mindset, where being able to have community like that we have, or have, I think for myself, even like in sales, I love sales because it's something that like numbers are really straightforward and they don't lie. And it's like in a lot of ways, it helps me. It's like kind of like a gut check or like a check of like, where am I at mentally, emotionally, right? As on a week to week or month to month basis, because I know that because I've been doing it for so long at this point in time that I know that I can do it. And if I'm not doing what I know is like pretty much second nature to me, then there must be something going on inside of my head, right? Like there's really no other explanation for it. But it can be really hard to just stay aware of where we're at. And that's where things like, you've mentioned information and inspiration, right? In our brain and in our heart, just staying in the flow, like in action, moving forward is the only way that we can keep our mindset fresh, right? Because it can also get weak, right? Like it can be really easy to take it for granted too. And like just because you got past like the learning curve or you got through all this stuff, that doesn't mean that it's incapable of your mind like falling off, right? And keeping it sharpened. The hero's tale of like when you break through that threshold, like that moment of desperation, but then it's a cyclical thing that happens time and time and time again for us, right? It's not just like there's that one tale and then that's it, right? And then we made it and now we're good.
That would be super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, one linear story arc over 100 years.
Yeah.
It's interesting how success is a habit. Just like we can develop bad habits, we can develop good habits. It's just embracing like some of these frameworks. So maybe that'd be a question I'd ask you. I mean, you've done so much mentorship for leaders that we work with, and so just like, what do you feel like would be? Let's just start with one framework for helping someone to develop a success habit, a habit of, a mindset that is going to help them to be able to get out of their situation, to be able to, progressively to work towards their goals.
I think it was some of the stuff we were talking about earlier in the table, where it's just like learning what works for you. Seeing what works for other people is really important, but learning what works for you is really another step in that learning curve, right? And you remind me of it when you guys make like 30 dials and you have some sort of negative event. What does that look like for you guys?
Yep. So if we do 30 or 40 dials or have a negative event, we have to do something that breaks the cycle of that. So for us, it's handstands. We just start doing as many handstands as we can before we get tired, and then right back to dialing. And Carlton taught us that. He's like, go ride your bike, go run around the block, just go do something.
And you're like, what about handstand? What about, oh, let's take that foot to the next level.
Yeah. Well, like handstand, it started out as bear crawls around the house, but I was like, I don't really want to bear crawl up and down the stairs. So it's handstands just to break the rut, you know what I mean? Of just not getting like that one bad call, let it turn into, that was 3 bad hours in the morning, because it was probably like 30 seconds of just one bad call.
Yeah.
And it can easily snowball into 3 bad hours, so
easily. Yeah, I think learning how to work in a way that opens up capacity is a really big thing. And people ask the questions like, if you could have a superpower, what would it be? And it's like, well, I'd want to fly. I want X-ray vision. I want all the creeps say invisibility, right? So it's like, wait, they spoke them out.
Too filtering question.
That's right. Yeah, that's why you ask it during an interview. Oh, you want to be invisible? Oh, I can't see you anymore.
But the one that I would put above all of those is the ability to execute. I think that is the ability to do the things that you think about or have been prescribed to you in a quick fashion. And I don't mean like a really highly accurate fashion. I mean quick. Like, can you springboard from idea to action quickly so that there's less doubt that has the opportunity to grow in this place of unknowing? Like, you don't know what's going on. And because of that, what naturally creeps up for us as people, because we have a survival instinct, is doubt. And so if we can go from thought to action really quickly, like as quickly with the things as we do bad things, right? As quickly with things that are, that tempt us maybe, if we could do that for, instead of just things that are temptations, if we can do that for the beneficial things and turn that, because we already know we can do it, we just have to turn it for good. That is a big deal. So the ability to execute and find ways to continue to execute over time by inserting energy into the system and breaking patterns. So do you know how to create energy, and do you know how to break patterns? Because when we learn how to break patterns, we stop and we stop all the energy, right? But when we know how to execute on the back end of that, we can recreate and we can do everything from a comma to a period to an end of a paragraph to the end of a chapter to the end of that volume of the book. right? Whatever you want when you have that ability. And I think that all starts with being able to endure truth as it's fed to us, being able to endure truth. The truth is that I overthink and I underdo. And that if I would do most of the things and create a reflexiveness about it, I have an opportunity to improve every single one of my relationships around me, just with the things that I know today. But it's not what we know, it's what we use. And that's the framework, is like being able to create that execution, that model for execution, and continuing to execute it capacity by breaking patterns and creating energy. That's such a huge piece. And I find that the people who typically can do that are the ones who can access gratitude. They can access gratitude. They all of a sudden, they know how to get back to a big world rather than a small one, because most people who struggle live in a very, very small world. And it becomes myopic, and you can tell because they're so focused on one person or one problem, and that's all they talk about. And it's the people who have success are the people who are able to get into that small place and then open it back up and say, yeah, I know it feels this way. However, this moment isn't everything we have, and I'm not going to turn 30 seconds into 3 hours. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be able to open up the aperture and pretend like I'm alive now, just like I was alive a second ago, just like I was alive a second ago. And then I'm going to be alive in the future in a second. So why can't I start, instead of continuing the curse, why can't I start generously giving my future self gifts? And that's really the framework that I see people open up, because I see a lot of highly skilled, ungrateful people out there who it's only a matter of time before their life is eaten up by bitterness. Because life is difficult, right? Life is difficult, but it doesn't mean we have to have a difficult time thinking. It doesn't mean we have to have a difficult time executing, and it doesn't mean we have to have a difficult time in our relationships. It just means that life in itself is difficult, and we can lose our entitlement to having an easy life. Instead, we can gain the responsibility of becoming tough, of becoming strong, of becoming open, and of inviting other people into that work with us, so that we can build communities that really matter, rather than the communities that are okay by just trying to soften your fall, rather than the type of community that builds each other up like we have here. And I think that's the biggest difference, because if I didn't have a T, I would look at my life. That lack of accountability in my life is a problem. I need other strong men and women in my life who are willing to say the things that they're doing and remind me of what it was like, or give me inspiration of what it could be like. And then just that accountability of like, don't bring that nonsense around here, right? It's like that accountability. Like, imagine if somebody gossiped in a crew like this. Yeah, like, no, we're not hearing that. But all right, the conversation would all of a sudden take a hard right turn,
Right.
in that sense, and it would be like, yeah, so enough about that, because we have standards,
Yeah, right.
and we have stinkers. I don't just have standards, or Kashan, you don't just have standards. We build a team where we all have standards for each other, and that first standard is, we're important to each other, we're valuable to each other more than just what we do. We're valuable to each other as people, as human beings, and at the next level, we don't just get to share air, but we get to build business. Right? And then through that, we get to start to join and live lives together. And that's, it becomes this big conspiracy for everybody's highest possible good.
Love that. So just that vehicle for expanding capacity is the ability to execute.
Yeah. Yep. The ability to execute. And people are going to say, oh, that's stupid. Right? Because so many people spend all their time, like, you can tell it's like, well, I don't want to turn my Zoom camera on because I don't want people to see this. And it's like, one thing that I was always really sure of is like, I'd rather be ugly rich than pretty broke, right? I'm not trying to sit there and fix my hair. I remember the Hunt agency, when I started working with them, I'd always be wearing a hat before the Zoom, and my hair would always be sticking out. And they always said, it looked like you just got hit in the forehead by a bird, right? And that was like, and I was like, yep, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. I can show up this way too, because in a lot of people's heads are programmed to believe in perfume and polish. And what we know here that matters is the grit that makes a great character.
Yeah.
And that's what matters in this story in order for us to build this story that really matters. Like this is a story that is not only a great one to tell, but it's a better one to live. We need to live together.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We appreciate it. We wanted to also express gratitude for, you guys pulled together a recent incentive trip that we all were able to participate in. And just so grateful that we have the kind of community that you're a part of developing and that you've helped spearhead really the crafting of culture that, it inspires people to be able to grow and grow themselves, expand their capacity, and just, to lock arms with the association, people doing that as well. So,
Yeah, exceptionally grateful to just be a part of the whole team, because as much as I was, it was me as an independent broker, just like it was you as an independent broker, and we got to see each other on these trips, and we've gotten to know each other. We've got to see the growth in Timothy, and then watching you inside of the organization from the time that you started with it. I think it's really going to be awesome in the next 3 years. Let's see what's possible for all of us, given that we actually did get to open up Volume 2 in the Monteith organization. And we have an opportunity to recreate a story arc that's more full of that execution and gratitude, and more full of the relational accountability that's going to help us all get to the top together.
yeah.
So, yeah, grateful for that too.
Yeah, a lot.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Thanks, Timothy.
Thank you. Thank you, Garrett. Super grateful. Thanks, Johnny.